All right, it is championship weekend in the NFL. This is the OFN Today with Mark Lawrence, brought to you by Covers.com and, of course, our partners at ourlads.com. So, Mark, 4 teams are left, and the favorite to win the Super Bowl is not one of them. How about that? How about those Ravens, baby? How about that trend that we shared to our audience last week that hopefully they picked up on? Even though it wasn't a trend regarding last week, it was a trend regarding winning a Super Bowl. But, of course, you know how I feel about the Ravens, and we'll talk more about that. Since 1983, 17 teams, now 18 teams have scored more than 510 points in the regular season. Only one team still, the Rams in 2000, wound up winning the Super Bowl. And the Ravens, 530 yards of total offense last week. It doesn't matter. It's just a gimmicky number in football. Look at this year. We saw the Dallas Cowboys, among other teams, with all the points or all the yards. It doesn't mean anything. It's not the true nature of football. And this is what I was trying to say all year to all of these people that were going fanatically crazy over Lamar Jackson and the Ravens this year, as well as the fact that I mentioned the joke of 12 Pro Bowlers on this team. They were overrated, and we saw it on Saturday night. Go Titans.
Well, the Titans did go. They went and they kicked Baltimore right out of the playoffs. And it wasn't a surprise to either one of us, as you mentioned, Greg, for a lot of those reasons you mentioned. Also, the fact that Baltimore was indeed the number one public team. And very, very seldom will you find the number one public team entering the playoffs, making it to and winning a Super Bowl. It's just a lot of weight to have to carry, too many expectations, and they oftentimes find ways to burst. And it also psychs up the opponent, as they did last week with Tennessee. So a great job by Mike Vrabel in another terrific coaching job in that sense here. And all we can do is say, join us on the sidelines, Lamar. We'll be watching the playoff championship games this week without you.
Yeah, it's so funny. All of the analysts, this is the difference between these analysts, especially the former athlete analysts. By the way, it's a very sunny day again in South Florida, I can see.
Yes, it is. It's pouring through right now.
It's like one of those situations where in baseball where we have to wait, the pitcher and the catcher have to wait until the sun leaves the mound area with the sun.
That's exactly right.
So by the time we're done here, we'll have the shadows gone. So it's so funny when you see these, and this is the difference. This is why these former athletes turn analysts don't get it when they need to be true professionals. And being true professionals, you have to admit when you're wrong. Sure, there's a certain extent. Nobody's going to go out there and throw themselves under the bus. But you have to admit when you're wrong, and if you're not, then at least don't double down like you're right when you're wrong, like a lot of these guys did with Lamar Jackson this weekend. And that's the thing that I just thought was completely ugly, was all of this stuff about sticking up for Lamar Jackson, and he's still going to be great, and he's going to be even better next year. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you can't see that he's never, and this offense is never going to succeed until he learns how to throw the football properly, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, he did a better job this year than last throwing the football, just not up to NFL standards. And you're also going to have next year more game film on Lamar Jackson, which is going to make it difficult for him to even come close to putting up the numbers that he did this year. He's going to find that to be very, very difficult to have to step up and at least match or mirror those numbers. And let me say this about yardage in the National Football League. I'm a real big technical handicapper, and I'm a very big statistical handicapper. And together with me, they both merge together when I can find the perfect balance. When it comes to looking at teams out-yarding other teams, like Baltimore just completely crushed other teams in the stats this year, all the stats basically are indicators of what possibly can happen. Not what will happen, but what possibly can happen. in a certain circumstance. Doesn't mean it's going to happen that way all the time. You look at the Green Bay Packers, they won, as we talked all year long about winning a lot of games with smoke and mirrors this year. They were outgained in more football games than they've been gained this year. So, they're on the opposite end of the spectrum there that way. And those yards that Baltimore did put up last week were largely garbage yards.
Yep.
He got his passing numbers, he got his rushing numbers, everything looked good in the stat sheet,
Mm-hmm.
but they were meaningless. They were hollow numbers. They didn't mean anything because at the time when he put those numbers up, they were so far out of the football game it didn't matter. The other team was back in the prevent defense and just allowing chunks of yards because it really didn't matter at that point. So when you're looking at statistics and yardage, you have to look at true yardage, and you have to look at circumstances that surround the yards in the play as well. So that's one of the reasons Lamar Jackson is on the sidelines this particular week. And it's also one of the reasons on the flip side, San Francisco, the number one seed, is where they are today because their defense is indeed the best defense in the National Football League. And now their defense is healthy once again. So stats can help you handicapping games, but they can also betray you.
Yeah, there's still look. If this, that's why the 12 Pro Bowler thing was to me the tip of the iceberg as far as the exaggeration of this Ravens team. And we saw it again on Saturday night. If they had 12 Pro Bowlers, they wouldn't have been pushed around the way that they were. Because if they were truly like the Ravens' last Super Bowl championship team, the one with that dominating defense, like a real true dominating defense, then yeah, I think maybe then Lamar Jackson, he doesn't probably have to throw the ball as well as you would like to see him throw it. You could probably skirt by and win a Super Bowl with him. I'm not saying you can't win a Super Bowl with him. You can, but he's going to need help all across the board. He can't do it himself running all over the field. It just doesn't work in the NFL. And, I mean, the guy hasn't won a playoff game yet. I'd like to congratulate him, and I often talk about he's had a great year. He deserves to win MVP and all of that. But there's a big difference between giving a guy accolades for what he's accomplished in his 2 years than exaggerating the fact and talking about how great he is and he's the best quarterback ever and look at what he's done now and what he's going to do. It's tiresome. And so, yes, I'm relishing in the fact that all of these analysts have pie on their face. But as I said, I think they need to have a little humility. I think they have to understand when maybe they should temper their enthusiasm a little bit. And if they don't, then I would hope the people that watch these certain analysts instead watch, real true professionals like you and me will come to understand who they should actually pay attention to more.
The one thing I think I regret the most is the fact that he will not be playing in the Super Bowl, and that's because there was always a huge handicapping edge in fading the MVP winner in the Super Bowl game. They struggled mightily.
Yes, you mentioned that. Yes.
Yeah, we won't see that this year because he is going to win the MVP. That vote was taken before the playoffs began, so that's in the bag right now. Regardless of what happens moving forward here, it will still be Lamar Jackson, MVP winner, and he did have an MVP type season.
Yes.
There's no, you can't take that away from him. But like you said, you're not going to win football games consistently. You're not going to make it to the Super Bowl with just a one-style attack. He's much like Michael Vick. He's the new wave Michael Vick quarterback right now. And like you said, he's going to have to learn to develop the ball in the air to become a better balanced quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not big into the Pro Bowl, but I wonder if there has been a team that has 12 Pro Bowlers and an MVP on the same team that has lost in the first round of the playoffs. Because, see, that's the thing. They did have an MVP, but they didn't have 12 Pro Bowlers. It's just you can't have both and look like that. That's just, he proved he was an MVP because he carried that team. If he wasn't there and that was RG3, and look, I don't think RG3 is a bad quarterback. I think he's a good backup. So if they had RG3, though, they're probably maybe they could at the very best be a 500 team. That's at the very best. But, sort of like when Peyton Manning, I remember that one year when Peyton Manning, the year that he got hurt, And the Colts, of course, they won like 1 or 2 games, and then of course he was gone, and then Drew Luck came in because of that season. And the year before, they were like a typical, really good playoff Colt team. It just shows you how much better one player, especially a quarterback, can mask all the deficiency on a football team.
Unquestionably, and it's almost always the quarterback who is that person. You have rare exceptions, Khalil Mack, on some pretty good defensive football teams with the Denver Broncos and so forth and whatnot, or Oakland Raiders. But the bottom line here is it's almost always the quarterback that does just that, because he's the guy in the spotlight, he's the guy that makes the most money, and he's the guy that's most likely going to gather those MVP awards.
All right. And by the way, before we move on, John Harbaugh, something we also talked about, once again, he was in the favorite role, not the underdog role in the playoffs. And that's something that the Ravens and Harbaugh are not really accustomed to as many times as they had success in the underdog role. So that came into play as well. But, hey, Tennessee, what can you say? A second straight upset. They remind me so much of the Jets and Rex Ryan, the year that they beat the Patriots, went to the championship game and lost, and they had that really good run of beating some good teams the first couple of years. They did it back-to-back years, but only so. And that back then, they had a really good running game, the number one running game in the NFL. They didn't have a superstar like Henry, but they had the number one rushing attack. And they had a young quarterback. So they really went with the running game and defense. That's kind of what Tennessee's doing. So the first thing I was thinking about is, but how long can this keep going on? Because Jets couldn't keep it going. So can Tennessee keep it going? And then you take on this Kansas City team, and that was just the craziest game that I have seen in the playoffs in a long time as far as outcome. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody talk about records down 24-0. I don't know if any team has ever come back from 24-0 before to win a playoff game, let alone take the lead in the first half down 24-0. But the immediate reaction I think everybody had after Kansas City won, justifiably so, was, wow, look how good they are. But I think as you kind of wait during the week, you calm down, you refocus, and you kind of understand what happened in that game and what Tennessee brings to the table that's so much different than Houston. I'm a lot more confident since I've taken Tennessee the last 2 weeks to win these games that they can win again. This is not going to be anywhere near as easy as a lot of people or some people think it might be.
I agree. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they're on a red-hot run right now, 6 wins or 7 wins and covers in a row, making the public wrap their arms all around them, especially because they did come back and win that game unbelievably last week. But, don't look past, as you say, the Tennessee Titans in this game. They're playing their best football of the season here. Ryan Tannehill hasn't thrown the ball for 100 yards in each of the last 2 playoff games. But he hasn't needed to.
No.
I mean, he's got Derrick Henry in the backfield. And even the few times that he did deliver the ball in key situations, he put the ball right on the money for big scores and big strikes. Ryan Tannehill, remember, is still the top-rated quarterback in the league in QB rating this football season here. So he hasn't really been asked to step up to the plate, per se, if you will, because of this monster run that Derrick Henry is on here. And I realize, yes, it is 4 in a row on the road. But you know something, at this stage of the football season, when you're playing as good as they are, with as much momentum as they are, they wouldn't care if this game was being played in Tokyo. It wouldn't matter to this team.
Yep.
They're going to come with everything they've got in this football game here. And I think what fits like a glove here is Tennessee's strength and the Kansas City's weakness. Their Achilles heel is the rush defense. It's flat out lousy. They allow nearly 5 yards a carry to the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're terrible. They're even worse at home, where they give up over 129 rushing yards a game at home to the Kansas City Chiefs. If I'm Andy Reid, I'm staying up real late burning that midnight oil, figuring out how I'm going to stop this onslaught named Derrick Henry this particular week. And then again, you've got the Patrick Mahomes factor here in this football game, that everybody has got him in the Super Bowl here right now. That puts a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes, who until, and I will say this, I know they're cruising right now, but his numbers were not earth-shattering.
That's right.
Not earth-shattering at all this whole season. And he only came alive last week when the team came alive.
Yep.
If they don't make that comeback here, we're not even talking about Patrick Mahomes in this football game. We're talking instead about Deshaun Watson. So the bottom line to me is you got a Tennessee football team playing with a ton of momentum right now, with all of everything you want in a football game in the playoffs, a running game that can stop the run. Their defense has really stepped up. I'm with you. I like the Tennessee Titans in this contest.
Yeah, and that's why I said I think you have to slow it down. You got to think big picture. You get too caught up in the moment. Look, there's no question they're a sexy team to pick. If they came out and they used last week's game as a confidence offensive springboard that they're just going to annihilate or offensively just dominate the next couple of games and win the Super Bowl, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised. I could see that happening. But I just am going to wager, statistically speaking, that that's less likely the factor. That what we've seen over the course of the season outweighs 1 week, one game against a poorly coached football team and a team with absolutely no confidence whatsoever in a 24-0 lead.
Well, what I like also knowing about Tennessee, Greg, is the fact that you go back to 1990 in conference championship games, the underdog has won straight up nearly a third of the time. So it's not anything new to those teams to pull upsets at this stage of the season here. And the biggest number that jumps right off the page is the consequence that Kansas City is likely to pay this week for putting all those points up on the scoreboard last week. You know, you find a football team that put up 51 points in a playoff game. You look at teams that put up 40 points in a playoff game. The next game when they're favored, they're 1-14 against the spread. That's called returning or regressing to the mean in real quick fashion, and it almost always happens in the playoffs.
Yeah, matter of fact, I knew that there was something along those lines because when the Jets were in the playoffs and beat the Colts that one year that the Colts weren't very good, and they beat them up 1 week, and then the next week they lost to the Raiders. There was something about that game because they had blown them out that I remembered that ever since. And maybe it was me at the time looking at trends of what happens when you blow out a team in a playoff game, and that stuck with me. And so when you put these numbers up available, a playbook on the newsletter this week, that was remembering. Yeah, okay. I remember that there was something along those lines that did ring true, that whether it's the big number, the score number 40, or just blowout in general, it's very hard in the NFL to blow out two really good playoff teams in a row. Usually you do it 1 week, you come back down to normal the next game.
Well, it's like Major League Baseball throwing a no-hitter. Only Johnny Vandermeer did it back-to-back times. It's called regression to the mean, and you're very, very difficult to get back up to the same level that you were at a peak performance the previous game. And I think that will well be the case with Kansas City here. It won't be a surprise to a lot of people if Kansas City wins this game comfortably. Mm-hmm. It will be to me, just given the fact of what they did last week, and also given the fact that you have a very hungry Tennessee Titan team coming in here.
Yeah.
That's got a great game plan with a really good coach and a lot of talented players here. So, bottom line, put the gun to my head. I'm taking the points with the Titans in this contest.
And also, remember, we talked last week, no Ogba, no Okafor, no Thornhill. Then Chris Jones doesn't even play. Well, I'm not going to penalize Tennessee because Houston isn't good enough to take advantage of that. So I don't care if Chris Jones plays or not, because there's no way if he plays he's going to be anywhere near 100%. And to tell you the truth, I doubt he's going to play. That is just – he's the best defender on the team. He is an interior pass-rushing force, one of the best in the NFL. And you just keep taking these really good defenders off of an average defensive football team, and somebody's gonna eventually let you pay for it. And what's good about when you're taking Tennessee too, if you're going to take Tennessee, is if the running game does succeed, well, the team that wants to pass the football stays on the sideline. And when he stays on the sideline and it's 15 degrees out there, he's not going to be able to get very hot. And I could use, of course, that adjective a few different ways.
I concur 100% because, the adage of you run the ball, you stop the run, you win the football game. A lot of that mixes into the fact that the other team is on the field while you're pounding and controlling the football game. The defense is wearing out. The defense is getting tired doing just that. So the offense isn't as crisp as it would like a chance to be. And that could well be the case in this matchup on Sunday.
All right, a few more interesting notes before we move on. As you mentioned, the Chiefs have won 7 straight up and against the spread. But let's keep in mind the last time they lost, against Tennessee. Also, Tennessee 5-0 straight up and against the spread in their last 5 road games. So they've got their own streak going. And keep in mind, too, that even though, and I think you mentioned this as well in the playbook, even though the Chiefs won last week, they are still, if you're just looking historically, again, don't look at last week, just look at historically, the Chiefs are still just 2-7 straight up and against the spread as a home playoff team. And Andy Reid has only won 1 of 6 championship games between the Chiefs and the Eagles. So good numbers there for the Titans.
Yeah, a lot of good numbers for the Titans there. A lot of them anti-Kansas City Chief numbers. But again, if we didn't have these Kansas City Chiefs numbers, I'd still be pointing out the strengths of the Tennessee Titans as they come into this football game. And they're the type of team, I believe, that can take advantage and expose the Kansas City Chiefs in this contest.
Looks like linebacker Jayon Brown might return this week. He did not play last week. He's their top linebacker for Tennessee. Adam Humphries looks like he's returning, the wide receiver, the free agent they picked up from the Bucs this year. He had the game-winning touchdown in the first matchup against Kansas City. And so those are a couple of additions that Tennessee will be happy to get back in this one. Speaking of dogs in the playoffs, Titans being one of them, or at least in championship games, the dog in championship games in the NFL the last 2 years, 3-1 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. So that might sound like it's going to be a good deal for the Packers. And why not? There's a lot of reasons to like Green Bay, and that's one of them, including the fact, as you pointed out in Playbook.com, that Aaron Rodgers has never lost a cover as a dog of more than 6 points in his career. That's pretty phenomenal, and he's a pretty phenomenal quarterback. And I've kind of been going back and forth all week on this. I still am 100%, like I have been over the last month, on the side of San Francisco winning the Super Bowl. When I changed from Seattle to San Francisco, that hasn't changed. But to cover this game or not, that's the thing I've had a little bit hard debate on myself all week. And because there are good reasons, as I just mentioned, those are a couple of them, to like Green Bay. I am going to take San Francisco, though. I'm still going to side with them. But there are a lot of reasons why to like the Packers in this one with the point spread, and I think that's the way you're going to go.
Well, there are, to me, a lot of reasons to like the Green Bay Packers. I like roaming in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, especially in big football games and especially when he's taking points. He just carved up last week that Seattle football team every time that they felt they had a chance to get in the game.
Third down, they killed him.
Third down after third down after third down with passes that were dead smack right on the money. He's the example of a Hall of Fame quarterback at his absolute best, operating just like that. The football team, other than him, Aaron Jones is really a terrific football player. It's really, really good to have him in the backfield here. Their defense is mediocre at best. There's nothing to write home about the Green Bay defense here. San Francisco's defense is the best in the league, and they've got a lot of key performers that came back last week, and they played just like that. But what I see here is Green Bay coming with this massive revenge chip on their shoulder from their worst loss of the season that they took right here at Levi Stadium against the 49ers on Thanksgiving week. That's still fresh on their minds coming into this contest here. And also, take a look at the Green Bay Packer MO this year. They were in 10 one-possession games this year. They won 9 of those football games, 9-1 in one-possession games this year. A dramatic improvement over last year when they were in 9 one-possession games and they managed to only win 2 of them. So we're finding a different mix here with Matt LaFleur, the quarterback, Mike Pettin, the defensive coordinator. I think it's all meshing for Green Bay right now at the right time. And the flip side of this equation here, San Francisco, I feel, has all the pressure in the world on them. You got Jimmy Garoppolo that's going to have to go toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers to justify or prove that he belongs in the same field with him, in the same conversation with Aaron Rodgers. You got San Francisco football team that, like we talked last week, hasn't been there for a long time. A 4-win football team last year, and 4-win teams that come off of a playoff win are just 1-12 straight up if that win was by 5 or more points. So it's asking a lot, I think, of San Francisco. Yes, they may win this game, but 7.5 points That's a tall order for me. At 7.5 points, I'll be on Aaron Rodgers in just about any game he plays.
Yeah, and the one thing I guess well, first of all, would you then counsel someone that wants to take the Packers and like the fact that, as you said, 9-1 straight up in one possession games this year? Would you then counsel them to say, well, you know what? Why not take a chance on the money line?
Absolutely. Aaron Rodgers is not coming here to cover this number. Aaron Rodgers is coming here to avenge that loss, to win this game, and to make it back to the Super Bowl. He could care less about the point spread. He doesn't have to care about the point
Uh
spread.
huh.
So he's coming here to win this football game. And in fact, I would play both of these dogs on money lines. You've got 7.5 point dogs in each football game, and if you win one of the two, you have a very profitable Sunday. And it wouldn't surprise me if one of these two dogs ended up winning these football games on the scoreboard.
Yeah, because I have San Francisco as far as a Super Bowl future. The way I'm looking at this is, you know what? Because I like Tennessee as obviously for a third straight upset. It's probably a good. What I'll do is I'll probably, of course, go with Tennessee straight money line, but I'll also do a parlay with Tennessee money line and Green Bay money line to hedge my San Francisco Super Bowl bet.
Yeah, you can hedge your bet a lot better than I can hedge mine. I had Green Bay to win the NFC at some pretty favorable odds at 8-1 before the season began. So I've got a real nice risk reward working in this football game, and to hedge that, I had to come back and lay a healthy price with San Francisco on a money line like minus 340.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is. But you know something? We're in this game for one reason, that's to make a
You're
profit.
right.
So I basically locked up a profit. I hated doing just that, but I'm in it to make a profit. So I did just that. But, on the sidebar note, I'm still going to look for to play both of these teams, like I say, straight up on money lines. And then hopefully I can be right on one of them and wrong on the
Yep.
other and still have a real good day.
Yeah, absolutely. That was like last week when we talked about liking all the dogs, and that would have worked out. It's just because of Tennessee. If you just would have went, okay, I'm just going to take and what was really, I mean, Saturday went so well for me because I had my Super Bowl pick win. I had my Tennessee upset, and I'm up to 34 points on Houston early on Sunday. Come on. Who loses up 34 points in the NFL? This ain't college. And I'm figuring, this was getting just too nice of a weekend. And then, of course, it all went down the tubes in about an hour. And then Seattle loses the point spread on a two-point conversion fail. What did you think about the decision for Pete Carroll to punt in that situation? Because what I thought he was going to do, what I thought he should have done was go for it, because even if you give up a field goal, you still are only down 8, and you could still tie the game by getting the ball back. That's kind
I
of
agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. He put a lot of confidence in his defense, but I think the worst move of the whole game was Bill O'Brien. What on earth was he thinking?
Oh, the fake punt.
That was the worst call made in the National Football League this year. Why do you even open the door for a sleeping giant to have to wake up and walk through? Unbelievable that he does what he did and risked and went for a first down on his own 30-yard line.
Yeah, if you're going to do something like that, you can't then kick the field goal at 21-0. See, I was okay. I know a lot of people were criticizing him for kicking the field goal to 24-0. The reason I didn't criticize him is because if you can't hold on to a 24-0 lead, then you don't deserve to win the football game. So I don't think it matters 28 or 24. That wasn't the difference. It wasn't like if they would have scored a touchdown, they would have won the game. So that to me means nothing. But if you're going to be conservative on one hand, you can't take a chance on another hand in a situation where you think it's easier for you to get a first down on a fake punt while a defensive back has to beat another defender for 5 yards by the time he gets the ball in the backfield at 6 or 7 yards, as opposed to your star player handling the ball on 4th and 1?
That's the key. The ball should be in the hands of your star player in a situation like that. And he opts to go for it on 4th down, thinking that, okay, we've got an opponent in Kansas City that may just have awoken, and they scored on their previous possession, and another scored. They're going to be back in this game, so let's take that air out of the balloon. Well, he didn't take the air out of the balloon. he assured that they were going to score on
Yeah.
their next possession.
Yeah.
He assured it.
Uh-huh.
And that's what eventually just lost the football game for them. It was a terrible decision.
And again, that's exactly as you were mentioning. That's exactly what Pete Carroll did. Instead of instead of putting the game and the season in the hands of his superstar quarterback, he put it in the hands of his below-average defense, who was getting shelled all day on third down. So I don't understand how. I mean, that's why I think a lot of times people just don't realize, unless you've been on the field, right there on the field, on the sidelines, just how fast these games go and how quickly these coaches have got to make decisions. And that's what separates the really good ones from the bad ones. But even Pete Carroll, as good as a coach as he is, can make dumb mistakes. And he's made his share of them over his career.
Well, that's what assistant coaches are for. Assistant head coaches are for. They're there to be that angel on his shoulder to make sure that he makes the right decisions.
Yep.
And if he appears to be making a wrong one, that's when it's time to speak up in his ear and, hey, let's talk about this. Let's make sure that we're doing the right thing here. And there wasn't anybody there that I saw to help out Pete Carroll. That was a Pete Carroll decision. There was a Bill O'Brien decision. And I think they need to rely a lot more on their coaching staff than they do in situations like this, because as you say, you're on the field. It happens so quickly, so fast. You don't have a chance to put your best thought forward, or you're being reactive in a situation like that instead of being proactive.
And I don't know. I mean, you're Houston. You're in a tough situation. Look, I know they're not going to get rid of Bill O'Brien right now, but I think after what happened in this game, he's definitely got he's on a year-to-year leash now. He has to be. They just can't. They can't look. Some coaches will get you to a point in their in a season where you can maybe win a playoff game and you can win a division that maybe not that strong, and that's what he's done. He's taken advantage of winning weak divisions pretty much, and he's got a star quarterback now, but he's got his share of questionable game day decisions, and he's the de facto GM right now. It's a mess at this time, but I gotta believe he's got to be on a short leash. They've got to get over the hump, and there's just no question. We've seen enough of Bill O'Brien to know that he's just not the right guy to get over the hump, and I'm sure he's going to keep getting NFL head coaching jobs. But unless he hires a defensive whiz and he has a really superior defense, I'm not sure I could see Bill O'Brien as a Super Bowl winning coach.
Well, if you think there's a short stick in the National Football League, try the NHL, where the 7 head coaches have been fired so far. 2 of them absolutely disgraceful. I mean, my goodness,
I
Gord
know.
Gallant, what he did for that franchise was incredible. Peter Laviolette with what they did with the Nashville Predators. Both of those teams go in mild slumps, and they're fired because of the
Yeah.
slumps. Unbelievable. So, something like this in football, to see Bill O'Brien lose his job would not be at all earth-shattering or surprising to me, especially if he goes into one of those slumps to begin the football season. He goes into his bye week with a losing record last year. You might see a change being made at that point.
Yeah, see, I'm happy because I'm a Vancouver fan. So I'm looking at the Pacific Division, and the only other coach that has tenure basically is Tocchet. And that's it. Every other coach has got like a short lifespan from coaches being fired. So it's like, hey, I haven't been to the playoffs in years. This is the perfect opportunity to make the playoffs with all these coaching changes. So, all right.
And you can make a circle, too, between what happened with Gord Gallant down here in Florida, the way they let him go. They
Yeah.
brought Peter DeBoer in here, and Peter DeBoer goes to New Jersey. He ends up out at San Jose. He ends up taking Gord Gallant's job in Vegas here. It's just a vicious cycle. It doesn't end. It's a continuing hockey soap opera.
I'm glad Rule got the. I mean, look, I was surprised in a way that he didn't get the Giant job, but I think what happened was Carolina has themselves a smart owner, and he knew that if Matt Rule was going to be pried away from his Giant dream job, it was going to have to be money. And he made Matt Rule a very rich man. And you can't turn down $60 million because you want to be the head coach of the Giants. And so that's good. If I'm a Carolina fan, I'm happy today because I've got an owner that wants to win, and he's making smart decisions because Matt Rule is going to get the job done in Carolina. I don't know how long it's going to take, but he's a good football coach.
Well, he's a great football coach, and if he follows on that same path that he did in college football, they may struggle the first year or possibly even two, but by year three, he should end up paying dividends and striking gold here. They're going to have to figure out who their quarterback's going to be, but they can resolve that here real quick with the NFL draft coming up here shortly.
Couple of quick notes. What the Niners do with Richard Sherman is going to be very interesting because they play more zone with their corners. Basically, Richard Sherman doesn't play man-to-man most of the time. He will play at one side of the field. So if you're Matt LaFleur, you're designing plays where Davante Adams is going to be on the opposite side of where Richard Sherman is. So it's really up to Saleh and the Niners. They've got to have some sort of a game plan ready to go where Richard Sherman has got to start covering Davante Adams one-on-one. I mean, seriously, if you can just take Davante Adams and shut him down out of this game plan, and you can limit the rushing attack. And by the way, the Packers only averaged 3 yards a carry. I mean, Aaron Jones only averaged 3 yards a carry last week against Seattle. So if you could do that to him this week, and you could shut Davante Adams out, the Packers can't do anything. So I'm going to be upset if, as a Niner fan, backing the Niners, if I see Davante Adams running all over the field because Richard Sherman ain't covering him.
Unquestionably, it's going to be a big key in the football game. 3 keys for Green Bay, obviously: Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, and Aaron Jones. Those are their 3 go-to guys. And if you say Richard Saleh, if he can shut down Davante Adams and limit Aaron Rodgers to be Aaron Rodgers show along with Aaron Jones, that could work in San Francisco's favor here. But all 3 things are going to have to click for Green Bay in this game for them to win.
And side note, too, Kyle Shanahan, I've talked about this a lot. Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, don't forget, they coached together with the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl when Atlanta lost with the big lead. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. Matt LaFleur was the quarterback coach. The very next year, Shanahan leaves, gets his job as the Niner head coach, and for whatever strange reason, Dan Quinn decides not to hire LaFleur as his offensive coordinator. Instead, he lets him go, and he hires one of his buddies to come in and run the offense, which was – no, I didn't even know if Sarkisian was a buddy. But that was the thing that drove me nuts just as an outsider. I can imagine as a fan of the Falcons, here's a Sarkisian who was a bust in Washington and as a coach, and he did nothing, and there was nothing there for him to succeed with Alabama. And then you give him the coordinator job here with the team that barely almost won the Super Bowl, and you have a quarterback coach right here who knows the system, and you let him go. So now you know why Dan Quinn's on the hot seat this year, or was on the hot seat this year.
Well, he doesn't make the wisest of decisions, unquestionably. Well liked by the players, the owner, in fact. But the bottom line is he is probably the epitome of somebody who needs that assistant head coach right next to him on the sidelines.
All right. So, Mark, appreciate it. We'll be talking in a couple of weeks for the Super Bowl. And then, of course, I look forward to talking to you later on when the season's over. Of course, college basketball is coming up. We've got a lot to talk about there and much more. But how's everything going as far as covers.com and playbook.com as you're gearing up in a few weeks for the Super Bowl?
Well, we're gearing up for the Super Bowl. We've got our midweek alert playbook football newsletter out there right now, available for download at playbook.com. We're also publishing our weekly playbook basketball newsletter weekly from now through the March Madness tournament. It got off to a great start in week number 1. Everything is available online at playbook.com. And my NFL playoff game of the year will be available at covers.com. Check it out at covers.com.
Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk to you for the Super Bowl.
Hey, my pleasure. As always, Greg, enjoy the games and be well.